Hello, everybody. Welcome to Life on Life's Terms. It's episode 66. My name is Kenny, and today we are going to get into the life and career of our special guest, some of the big moves and accomplishments with business in the for-profit, non-profit sector, what are some of the fruits of his labors and his workings, and what are some of the initiatives he wishes to see in the future. But before we get into this, I'd like to give a shout out to Ono Poke. Is a chef-driven fast casual restaurant serving Hawaii's signature dish. The menu features chef-curated bowls. Customers can select various bases for the bowls, including fur cake rice, quinoa, and spring salad, along with vegetable seasonings and proteins such as the torched miso salmon poke, the albacore tuna, and the spicy Thai salmon poke. Or you can build your own bowl. Ono in Hawaiian means delicious, and that is absolutely fitting for them. You can find Ono Poke at 10142 104 Street, Edmonton. Modern Gravity is the best place to relax with their spacious float tanks. If you have not floated, you got to try this. February is always a stressful month. For only $39.99, you can enjoy a float a month and let it all go. Go to Modern Gravity's website at www.moderngravity.ca. And I'd like to introduce our amazing guest, Lewis Cardinal. How are you today, sir?
Doing well. Thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, thank you so much for coming. It's honestly an honor to have you here.
Well, I'm honored. Thank you.
I was on crunch time here, and Justin and I had to bring in a guest for this month for startups and business. And I was looking for somebody that was successful and somebody that I could look up to and somebody that I would pick as a mentor or something. And then when I seen you and I started looking at your credentials, I was like, wow, this guy is the man. And all the different things that you've been involved in. Can you?
Well, I can be a busybody of sorts, I guess you can say. Some people would call me a Renaissance man, but I think of myself as being more of a person who's really involved in the community, and I say communities because there's many of them, and so. That the work that I do, it generally is in response to what the community is looking for. Yeah.
Well, I hear you on that. I kind of have the same driving force working in nonprofits and stuff. Is it your past struggles that keep you going like it is mine?
Well, it seems to be a family thing. In the history of my family, I have a number of leaders that have been like the makers of Treaty Number 8, for example. Mostus and Canusio were brothers. My uncle Harold Cardinal was perhaps one of the best known Indigenous leaders in the 70s and 80s, and so I've always gravitated towards working in the community to be supportive of the community in terms of what issues that they want to deal with. And that's why I got involved in politics as well as not-for-profit industry as well, and education. So all these things are really linked together.
Your company is called Cardinal Strategic Communications.
That's right.
What is that? That's one thing I didn't research because I wanted to ask you on the show.
Yeah, well, it's strategic communications is the key phrase there, and it's about how does a community or an organization create its ideas? How does it communicate with itself? How does it communicate with the world around it? If a community league, for example, wants to build a skating rink, well, what you do is that you go into the community and you have a strategic communication, a strategic dialogue plan, right, to collect information from the community to work towards building a relationship through consensus in terms of what their needs are. So if they might turn out that they don't want a skating rink, it might be something totally different. But by having that strategic communication is key, because then you really are pulling in different opinions and voices and bringing them together.
Are you hired by the communities or municipalities?
Yeah, I've been hired by the City of Edmonton, the Government of Alberta, a number of organizations, both for-profit and not-for-profit. But I think if there was a slogan for my company, it would be, it's all about relationships.
Absolutely. That's one thing I am a strong believer in, that the key to business is relationships and the key to life is relationships.
Absolutely, because that's the foundation, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You and I had an interesting talk yesterday on the phone, and
Yes.
we went pretty deep.
Yeah.
We went to the deep end
Real,
without any water.
yeah, pushed you in the deep end without any water. Yeah, that's right.
I want to touch on some of that, but I think before we do, you have done a lot with your life, and you have affected many, many people's lives, and it's really inspiring. And some of the fruits of that, can tell me please on air here some of the people that you've met that are of power or of
significance.
Significance is the word.
Giants.
Yeah.
Actually, on my Facebook page, it's there is a photo album called "In the Shadow of Giants," and in there I have photographs with Noam Chomsky. I spent a day with him. We were interviewing him for one of our radio programs that we had. So I had a chance just to hang out with Noam. He says, "Oh, please, just call me Noam." I said, "Okay, Dr. Chomsky." and it's a delightful man. He has a great sense of humor. I also spent a half a day with the Dalai Lama in the House of Commons back in 10 years ago or something like that. And that was an experience. I mean, really a lifetime experience. It was.
Yeah.
It was really incredible how I got to connect with him and then be invited as his guest in the House of Commons while he was on tour there. So we got to go to all these meetings, and we would just be there, and he'd always introduce us as his guests, myself and a dear friend of mine, Linda Bull. And so we were there. We were actually there inviting him to come to Edmonton for an elders conference that we were putting together. So that's how we wound up in Ottawa. I got a call from one of the MPs who was David Kilgore, who was the host of His Holiness while he was in Canada, and he says, "Okay, Lewis," he goes, "I got you 15 minutes with the Dalai Lama. Can you be in Ottawa tomorrow?"
Okay.
So I said, "Sure, yeah, I'll be there." He said, "Meet me under the Peace Tower." Right, so
Wow.
the main entrance, the official entrance, right? And it was so funny because he tells I'm supposed to meet him there, but he's late, right? And the Dalai Lama hasn't come yet because he was coming in this limousine sort of thing. So he tells me to meet him at the front door. Well, there's the world press is there, and all the security is there, and so and I'm told to go to the carpet, the red carpet, and wait for David to come there and meet me. And so I'm standing there with my elder, and the security guard says, "No, you can't stand there. You have to go stand over there." So and he points, but it's quite a ways from the front door. I said, "Well, I'm supposed to meet MP Kilgore here," and he says, "No, you go stand over there." Okay, so I go stand over there, and here comes the limousine. Great big stretch limousine, right? And it pulls up, and the very front doors of the limousine pull up to the red carpet, right?
Not the back door.
Everybody snaps up to attention and everything like that. And here's the back door right in front of me, right?
Yeah.
And so it opens. It opens up, and there's the Dalai Lama. And I looked at him and I said, "Welcome to Canada, Your Holiness." And he comes out.
And you were the first person to greet him.
First person, yeah. And he was saying, "I'm so honored to be greeted by the first peoples of this country."
That's beautiful.
And then he said, "Would you do me the honor of being my guest during my visit here today?" So I got swept up into his orbit.
That's a manifestation for sure.
That was just incredible. Hurricane Carter was also someone that was actually, him and I were both speakers at two separate conferences in the same month one year. So it was kind of nice to connect with him. Oh gosh, I had dinner with the Queen some years ago.
Dinner with the Queen.
Yeah, that was hilarious because I remember standing there with some other chiefs and the protocol officer comes up, and a very proper British man, and he's telling me, "Okay, this is how you have to behave around the Queen." She goes, "First of all, you don't turn your back on the Queen." And me being a smart aleck, I said, "Why? What's she gonna do?" And one of the chiefs say, "I had a dog like that once." Protocol officer just turned red and turned around and walked out.
She'll attack.
Oh, yeah. So, I've been fortunate to meet some very impressive individuals, particularly the Dalai Lama, because he was one of my childhood heroes. I'd read a few books about him, in his time in Tibet and all that sort of stuff. So it was really interesting to meet him, but it really was something that he was more of a human than this figure that I had in my head, right?
Yeah.
I remember we were taking a break, and he said he needed to sit down for a while and rest, and he had his government folks there from Tibet, and I was looking at him, and I thought, I wonder what he wears on his feet. Does he wear sandals, slippers? What is he wearing, right? And just at that moment, he put his hands behind his head, and then he shot his feet out from underneath his robes, and he was wearing like hush puppies with brown socks. It's like, oh, well, that makes sense. It's just like
he's just a normal guy.
reasonable shoes. I mean,
yeah, they're comfy.
Yeah, that was interesting. Yeah.
Wow, and you. I read online yesterday when I was looking you up because I wanted to have some content to talk about that in 1977, like you were homeless.
Yeah.
To go from homelessness to having dinner with the Queen is quite the...
Yeah, it's a roundabout way, but certainly it's when you put it that way. Yeah, we were homeless here in Edmonton, my brother and I. And you might know my brother, Lewis Cardinal from Corner Gas.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah,
yeah, and him and I we had a pretty difficult childhood, a lot of poverty, and we grew up here in the downtown area. We went to St. Joe's High School.
Yeah,
that's where we went. But yeah, it was tough times, needless to say. But when you look at it and you look back at it, it really helps you to keep focused in terms of what is important and what you want to do and what you want to leave behind, right?
Do you still see it as like an epidemic or a big problem in Edmonton?
Homelessness?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. I mean, it's I think it's a growing thing. The economics of our time have made it very difficult for families to hold their heads up financially. I mean, 70% of the population is one paycheck away from the streets.
Yeah, and it's a wonder why they don't teach financial literacy in school. Right?
That's right. But a lot of the homeless population also have mental health issues that aren't being addressed.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to bring up. I think that's the biggest problem here in Alberta, in Edmonton.
Yeah, because there are, about 25% of the homeless are hard to house because of those mental health issues. And our health system is not picking up that slack and addressing it, because back in the 1990s, the premier at the time was closing down all these hospitals and mental health facilities, right? So where are these people going to go?
Well, now we just throw them in jail.
Yeah, there you are.
Seriously, I've spent quite a substantial time in jail, and I'd say about 85-90% of people in there suffer from some form of mental health or trauma that still shows up in their life in different areas.
Well, one of the things that I do is I work with my good friend and ex-wife, Patricia Cardinal, in doing Glad You reports, right? So I think we've done over 100 of them together over the last couple of years. But it gives me that front line view of what is happening out there and what's happening with Indigenous people in the corrections facilities. And it's stunning for me to see how many of them have mental health issues. And I'm thinking, you shouldn't be in here. You need to be taken care of in a proper medical facility, right?
Well, all we have for mental health, and at the severe end of the spectrum, is Alberta Hospital.
Yeah.
And there's no transitional mental health program, or we have treatment centers for addiction, and most of them are ran off 12-step. But what about somebody with bipolar disorder?
Yeah, exactly.
Or FASD.
Yes. And FASD is huge. It's a
very, very prominent, especially in jail.
Yeah. Yeah. And then on top of that, if they don't have those biophysical issues, then you have the trauma of of pain, traumatic disorders,
life experiences.
Right?
It could be sexual abuse or physical abuse or there's lots of, and I see it in these young adults in jail, and it's sad, really, because now I'm like an inspiration for a lot of the people that I've known when I was in the institution, and they all phone me now because I run a bail program. It's funny because Justin runs a bail program, and you do Glad You reports. So kind of all of us are on the front line in the trenches, fighting for the people that are going through struggles that we went through in the past. But do you have any ideas or initiatives or how we can like create those programs, like something for mental
Well, yeah.
health?
I mean, when I think of Poundmaker's Lodge, I think of the Nietzsche Institute.
Yeah.
Nietzsche means friend, not Nietzsche the psychologist. But they have some really interesting work that they've done there in terms of recovery programs and that sort of thing. We need to see more of those within our organizations. Here in Edmonton alone, we have 60 different agencies that have been created to support the Indigenous community in one way or another. They are not nearly funded as well as they should be. There's a huge shortfall on that. So if they do get some program money, it's usually run maybe a year, and then funding is limited with that as well. And there's always cutbacks and things that you can or cannot do with the funds that you do get. So there isn't enough money being invested into these kind of programs that could be delivered. We don't need to build a monolithic hospital, but what we need to do is we need to have many doors open for homelessness and through different communities.
Well, do you think Health Canada is following through with on implementing their recommendations for Truth and Reconciliation Commission?
And, I think the door has been unlocked, and it's starting to swing open a little more now. I don't think that we've gotten to that point of where we're really starting to see the changes that we need, or the full implementation of the 94 calls to action from the TRC Commission report. There are some things that are starting to take place. Like, for example, in education, I teach two courses at the U of A on Indigenous history and education, and this is a mandatory course. So every semester we bring in 500 students and we put them through this 13-week course. It's very intense.
Wow.
But we're the only university that has done that in Canada. We were the first ones. So we started 8 years ago, I think, 7 or 8 years ago. And so we've put through over 6,000 pre-service teachers. So they're all going into the education system now equipped with more information around the Indigenous experience, whereas they didn't have any idea the history of Indigenous people in Canada, and it's shocking. And it's shocking for me to go talk with teachers with their professional development, and how many of them just absolutely had no idea. They heard about residential school, they heard about the reconciliation thing, but they didn't really understand the gravity of the impact that it had on generations of Indigenous people. And you see, and that's another layer that goes into this homelessness issue as well. That transferred trauma of residential schools is real.
Generational trauma.
Yeah.
I see it all the time too. Like coming out of the jails. One of my friends right now, he's in there and he's canvassing for me so we can get as much feedback as possible to come up with a youth gang prevention program.
Yeah.
Where we go in and speak. And he's Indigenous.
Yeah.
I'm Métis.
Mm-hmm.
And just go talk to these kids about have you ever been recruited? Like, what's in it for you? What are you going to get out of it? And like, why are you looking for companionship in the wrong areas, and point them in the right direction towards something more positive, proactive, and something that's going to keep them in their culture and not wash it out.
Yeah, exactly. From what I hear within the remand center specifically, I'm not too sure about the federal correction facilities, but they don't have enough cultural resource access for the inmates, right? They might have an elder come in once every month, but that's one elder.
Yeah.
And so, we can't realistically expect the elder to do much work when you're limited with that. So it's difficult for them who are searching, because they're looking for some answers to not only their predicament, but their life and what they're going to do when they get out. And being connected to culture is a foundational thing. And then once Indigenous people start to reconnect with their culture and they use it as a process that guides them through their life, the recidivism rate just drops tremendously, right? So they're not going back out and doing other crimes and that sort of thing. That's when they get plugged into the very foundation of Indigenous thought and worldview.
Well, like Indigenous people in Canada and Indigenous people in South America and Europe and all over, there's a lot of the foundational beliefs is very, very, very similar, and it all comes down to a belief. and you said this yesterday, that's
Yeah.
the foundation. It's like, do you have a belief? What are you, like, how deep does that run? Is there any, like, and I don't like to use the word faith, but I have yet to find another word
Yeah.
for faith.
No.
But faith.
It is.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's a belief. Yeah.
How can we come up with something or to increase that, to get more people into the prisons, to get more funding from the Solicitor General to create these programs? Because we've sat down with these guys and they're like, oh, sorry, purse strings are tied, we're broke.
But also, it's the nature of the institution itself as well. You know, it really has a large say. It builds its own culture in terms of what they're going to bring in. First of all, we're looking at the correction facilities as being punishment centers or recovering an individual. You know, so if you have a worldview that suggests punishment rather than recovery, that's the attitude that you're going to have, that people should be punished and put away and stored away for as long as possible, right?
Well,
Yeah.
I think it's pretty inhuman to warehouse humans.
Oh, it is.
Warehouse, they just sit them on the shelf for a couple months till they expire, and then they release people and they expect them to be reformed.
Yeah,
exactly. You didn't learn your lesson?
If they haven't did that deep work, the chances are is they'll continue their behavior. So the behavior has to change. And I have the saying that if you move the heart, the mind will follow. Right?
Yeah.
So, but that's that heart work that you need to get into. People need to address those deeper issues in themselves. And Indigenous culture is filled with all kinds of tools to help that person get grounded in who they are. But they need to go in and explore some of their own history, some of their own family history, all those sorts of things.
Because it's January and topic should be startups, even though I just want to dive right into this one. I think maybe we'll try to... what was it like starting up your business? Like, what drove you to do that?
Well, I was working at the University of Alberta. I was directing a program there for like 7 years. And I found that I was really limited in what I could do. And there was no vertical movement for me. I couldn't go any higher, right? And and my boss at the time said, you can have a really good life here. Just, this one job for the rest of your life for as long as and it's like sitting at a desk. and I thought, oh my gosh, I can't live like this. There's more things that I want to do, right?
Yeah.
And because the work was fine, but it was just limiting in terms of what I wanted to accomplish. So I resigned that year and went out on my own, started my company, Cardinal Strategic Communications, and began doing consultation work with communities and that sort of thing, working with our First Nations organizations for the federal government, worked in the education ministry, in moving around the province, asking people what do they see in the future for education. So that was a lot of fun. And the work that I do allows me to travel quite a bit, all over the province, across Canada, internationally as well. So it was scary though, because you don't know what's coming. If you have a contract, you don't know how long it can be. It could be wrapped up. I've had a couple of contracts that were just suddenly pulled because funding didn't come through one thing or another. So yeah, there's a bit of risk in that regard, but I think it's made for a great adventure because, again, I get to pick and choose what I want to do, what projects I want to be involved with. And
well, you're definitely involved in a lot. I have a list here, and it's not in order. I don't know which ones, if you're still involved in it or not, but co-chair of the Aboriginal Commission of Human Rights and Justice. Yeah. On the board of trustees of Parliament of the World's Religions.
Yes.
Parliament of the World's Religions. Mm-hmm. You're the founder of Indigenous Peoples Arts and Culture Coalition.
Yes.
On the board of directors at the Theatre Network, downtown Edmonton.
Yeah.
Founding board member of Racist Free Edmonton.
Mm-hmm.
Something about the Green Room, open space for youth. High-risk youth, is that what that is?
The Green Room?
Yeah.
I don't remember which one that was.
It was to create better communities.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was something that was a few years ago. So that's I'm no longer involved with that.
Oh, okay.
But the Parliament of World Religions, I just finished serving my 6 years on the board, which was a phenomenal experience, because I believe that if our society is to move forward, we need to understand more of what our spiritual traditions are. And we need those spiritual traditions to come and sit together and have dialogues about issues and seeing what we have more in common than we do difference, right? So it's a critical dialogue. So that's allowed me to, again, travel to different parts of the world and meet different kinds of religious leaders and things like that.
Wow, that must have been amazing. Do you have any like good stories for that?
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, like the Dalai Lama is our patron person again, so our paths have crossed. I had the chance to meet with Martin Luther King Jr.
Oh my God!
Yeah, Martin Luther King III.
Yeah,
just call me Marty is what he likes to say. Great guys. I mean, I met two of the Mahatma Gandhi's grandsons and granddaughter. But what's really exciting is that when you sweep away, all these images of grandeur and you sit and you have a dialogue with somebody of that stature, just to find out how simply human they are, put into a very peculiar situation, right? Sometimes not of their own making, but because they're thrust there, because history has placed them in that situation. But when you sweep away all of that, you just see, a kind person who really cares, genuinely cares about other people and making the world a better place. And that's one thing that's always struck me. Yeah. That's
like just looking at like your profile on LinkedIn, even though how impersonal LinkedIn is, you exude humanity.
Oh.
Right there. And like I was really like inspired by that. I was like, this person has a lot to offer and he's been giving it back. I was like, I wonder how much I can soak up of this guy in 1 hour. Like, because with the mastermind philosophy, right? We become the 5 people we hang out with the most, right?
Yeah.
And for the last couple of days, I've been cramming in all your videos on YouTube, and I think your best one is when you did like a PowerPoint or something with Edmonton Public Library.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Yeah, and I really like the piece that you go into, like how you started off with like what Aboriginal mean, or not what Indigenous means.
Yeah.
Yeah, not Aboriginal.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Indigenous. Yeah. Absolutely.
And it means to be human.
Yeah.
And it means build relationships.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's the center of it. If there's one thing that I've learned from elders and spiritual traditionalists, it's all about relationships. It's all central, because that word Indigenous is about relationship. Right? It's in relationship to something. It originates from the term, the Latin word is indigenous, but it means springs from or is born from the earth, right?
Yeah.
Comes from the earth. And when you have your worldview shaped like that, it naturally talks about the relationship that needs to be in place with Mother Earth and creation itself, there has to be balance. There has to be a maintenance of balance. And that's what we have, and that's what we need to be doing as human beings, is to be more balanced in our approach to how we live, and it brings up natural questions of the environment and, all the issues of global struggles that we see, military struggles and that sort of thing.
And environmental.
Mm-hmm.
I see that you're a big advocate for stopping pipelines from going through Indigenous land? Yeah,
I was at I brought my daughter with me to Standing Rock, the Standing Rock Sioux, when they had their encampment there. And it was, again, a great adventure to see. One of my heroes was Cornell West. And there's Cornell West standing right in front of me, and I'm talking. I'm giving a speech to the people in the camp, and he comes in right after me, and he starts talking. I'm thinking, I don't believe this. Yeah, here he is. And so, but just the power of all these people coming together in one place and standing together in solidarity of people of all different stripes of life, right? That was a very powerful experience. But the important thing is that we have to remember that the reason why they're standing against these pipelines is because when they do go bad, they go really bad, and it really causes a lot of problems. And so the watershed there is threatened. But now with a new decision coming down, they're not going to be moving forward with that Dakota Access Pipeline. as it turns out now, because because it's some of the work hasn't been totally completed in terms of consultation and that sort of thing with it. So it's a win for them, but it's their territory. It's their right to be able to stand up for the land, and that's what our cultures teach us as Indigenous people, is that we need to be able to speak for those that cannot speak for themselves, and that includes the land and water and that sort of
and
thing.
the animals.
And the animals, yeah.
Wow. So you are one of 11 siblings.
10.
10?
Yeah.
Oh, one passed.
Yeah. No, yeah, just 10, not 11. Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's the internet's wrong.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's 6 sisters and 4 brothers.
Okay.
And I'm one of the 4. So I'm the oldest brother. Yeah, and I have a sister who's older than me, so I'm the second oldest.
Yeah, well, you're setting a good example for them.
Well, I try, and they're all very talented in their own ways and what they do things. So I'm very honored that they're part of my family.
Something I heard you say in one of your speaks was a socially just and responsive society.
Yes.
What does that mean?
That means, again, like what we've been talking about, is how does our society see itself in relationship to other people? So our society needs to be responsive to the social needs of our citizens, and that it has to be just as well, because there's a lot of injustices that are happening within various institutions and governments that we do have. But we have to have that obligation deeply ingrained in us as to being socially responsible and responsive, not responsible, but responsive to whatever issues that we're facing. For example, racism. Racism is coming back with a vengeance right now, and hopefully I'll get word from the provincial government. I applied to sit on their racism council, and because we're seeing a great increase of racist behavior, violent racial behavior, and I don't think we're being responsive enough to that issue.
I've seen lots of times Indigenous people get discriminated against in these systems, like with the healthcare system or in the justice system. But how do we go about advocating for that and making programs to generate awareness about it to eventually see changes in the system?
It's a lot of heavy work. It's a heavy lifting, because you need to work with the governments in order to make things happen, right? But everything doesn't have to happen because of government involvement. Communities can come together and start to do their own grassroots efforts at repairing these kind of relationships. Like the education system is a good example of how we're starting to bring in more Indigenous knowledge and information into the education system, and that will enrich the education for our students and for our community as a whole. And there's different efforts being made by different organizations to be more open and responsive. Like, for example, the Alberta Council for Women's Shelters. I've done some work with them, and they've aligned all of their governance policies and regulations in line with the 94 calls to action and the UN Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People. So, and they went one step further, and they decided that they would take the title Treaty 6 and put it in their mailing address.
Sorry, we're on Treaty 6 territory.
Yes.
I'd like to acknowledge that.
Yeah, I take that for granted too.
Home of the Cree and Dene and Sioux, or no?
So, the Nakota. Yeah,
Okay.
the Dene. There's like 8 different types of Indigenous people: Plains Cree, Woodland Cree. But yeah, so they're doing that, and that was a step. So now when they have a business card, it'll say Alberta Council of Women's Shelters, Treaty 6 territory,
Cool.
and then the address below it.
I'm going to start putting Treaty 6 on all my stuff too.
Awesome. Yeah, well, that's the way you do it, and you start to make slight changes. Sometimes, the greatest victories aren't those massive wins that you get. There's these little steps, right?
Yeah.
And then they build up to make significant change.
And you can relate that to any type of business.
Yeah,
you got to
absolutely.
take little steps, and you got to pay attention to the small details.
You do. It's the devil is in the details, and I don't declare myself as a great administrator, but I know how important it is to make sure that all these little details are addressed, because it can sneak up on you and trip you up. That's for sure. Yeah.
So there's societal issues, and like your company is a for-profit business.
Yep.
And you are like a consultant.
Yes.
To help like communities and businesses strategize.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, strategize if they want to have a project development or something like that, right? You need to engage in a dialogue process that sets itself up in terms of consensus.
So I want to hire you for like 5 different things right now.
Yeah. And so it's, again, it's exciting for me to see how companies and organizations are trying to move into that good direction of being inclusive of Indigenous people, knowledge and ways of doing things that they haven't ever done before. And that's going to be a part of our healing as Indigenous people in Canada, is by having our stories out there and our stories being accepted by the general population as a part of Canadian history, not something that's been subverted or buried or anything like that. It's something that is a part of the Canadian story. And for so long, we haven't seen ourselves reflected in the Canadian story.
Oh, it's such a beautiful culture. Every time I see a nice pair of mucklucks or a nice beaded bag or something, I connect. The native in me is a small portion, but I'm proud to rep it, and I wear my Métis sash as a scarf all the time.
Awesome.
And I rep my colors.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome.
But like spending so much time in jail, like how do we go about creating more programming and getting the funding?
Yeah.
Like you've worked with numerous different nonprofits, but you don't see many dollars going to ex-cons or criminals.
Yeah, that's right. Well, again, it's that attitude, right, within the institution in terms of punishment versus recovery or rehabilitation or whatever you want to call it. There has to be a steady push. And that's one thing that I've noticed, is that you have to be vigilant all the time and reminding the government and the powers that be exactly what their responsibilities are and what they should be doing. Because if you don't make the ask, you certainly you're not going to get anything if you're not there to create that awareness. And so awareness is the key. There needs to be more of an effort within our correction facilities to be able to support individuals there and their recovery. Sure, they've created crimes, and most of them are take responsibility for their actions. But while they're there, they're also hungry. They want to learn. They want to learn more about their Indigenous history and culture, but they also want to learn more about skills, about relationship skills. That those basic human needs.
Emotional intelligence.
Yeah, exactly. There. Yeah, it's perfect. Yeah.
Yeah.
An EQ, not just an IQ. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I really noticed that I was able to change my life around when I started to become aware of my. I started to practice self-awareness, and I started to pay attention to my thoughts and feelings.
Yeah.
And in doing so, I was able to transform. I grew up in a household where organized crime was very prominent, and I had all the connections in the world to be involved in the wrong things.
Yeah.
And it obviously and inevitably led me to jail and addiction. But today, before something happens where I would have reacted, I can respond in a proactive way. And lots of people that are lots of the Indigenous guys that they're like my brothers. I've done years with these guys in jail, and they're reaching out to me, help me. Can you send me some books?
Yeah, exactly.
But I tried. I can't even send any books into the remand.
Yeah, and that's some of the comments that I've heard from the inmates in the remands, and they said there's nothing here to read. There's nothing really that they can really sink into, right? I mean, you have your novels and things like that, but something like what you're talking about, something that's really educational, and there needs to be more.
I learned my emotional intelligence from Wayne Dyer.
Oh, yes, yeah. Well, there you are. Yeah, the master himself.
And connect with source, your power hour first thing in the morning.
Sure, yeah. Well, those are tools, right? And so if an individual only has a hammer, then everything's a nail, right? You need to be able to provide more tools to use. And communication is a key thing, and you can link acts of violence to an inability to communicate, right? So you have to become mindful. You have to become aware of what your emotional state is, rather than just reacting to it. So, and those are, you don't. Some people never learn it. A lot of people don't have those kind of skills, but they're very useful tools in order to help mitigate any, bad behavior, I guess you could say.
Wow. We always jump over whenever I have a guest on it. I have no set order of the way I do things. I just kind of hobble over.
Yeah,
and just feel,
that's the best.
Yeah. So what are some of your plans for the future? And
well, I'm going to continue teaching. I'm finishing my PhD in education. I got to get all that paperwork back in, because I defended my proposal and did everything, all my coursework, and then I went into politics and I put that to the side for 10 years, right? So I'm trying to get back in. That's why I'm doing some teaching, just to kind of get back into the swing of the academy. And so I want to finish that, and that should be done in about a year.
Is there any politics in your future? I
don't know, but one thing that I did learn being involved in politics is that you never say never, because you just don't know. I could say, oh, no, and next thing you know, here I am running for city council again or something, So I just leave that door unlocked and just say, okay, well, if something happens, it is. I'm not actively seeking it out. I'm involved politically behind the scenes, and provide guidance and direction to various individuals to help them understand issues a little bit more. So I'm involved that way, right from civic to federal politics. So I'm still connected in that relationship.
When you were in politics, what were you running for?
I first in 2007. Yeah, I think it was 2007. Yeah, I ran for City Council, Ward 6, downtown Edmonton Center.
Scott McKean.
Yeah, Scott McKean.
Good old Scotty boy.
Yeah, and Jane Batty was also the sitting person at the time. So I came in second.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, I was 182 votes away from being elected to city council. That was exciting, and that was a really fun. It was all fun for me. It was fun because you go out and you meet people. You go knocking on doors, and that was scary for me at first. Was knocking on someone's door and say, "Hey, would you vote for me?"
That's my favorite thing to do. Like when I seen you, I just cold called you.
Yeah. There you are.
I just said, what do I got to lose? He says no.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly it. A lot of people don't realize that. It's amazing what you can get just by asking or showing up.
Yeah, and that's huge in any type of business.
Yeah,
just make the call.
And it was a wonderful experience meeting all these different people, at their doorstep, talking about life and things that are important to them. So you learn a lot. You learn a lot about yourself. You learn a lot about the community and where its heart is beating at any given moment. And so when I ran federally in 2011 for the NDP, I ran in Edmonton Center.
Federally?
Yes. Yeah.
So you ran for Prime Minister?
No, MP.
Okay.
One step at a time. Yeah, and so again, I came in second there, but it was a good outing the first time out, and so it was just a wonderful experience again to be able to meet all these different kinds of people and looking at politics from a different perspective, right? Being in the belly of the beast, so to speak, knowing how policies are made, the kinds of people that are involved with politics, and it is a blood sport for a reason, and it's
sometimes so is nonprofit sector too.
Yeah, you're telling me. I mean, there's politics everywhere. Oh yeah, absolutely. Competition is severe, right? So it was a good experience. Again, made a ton of friends that I still have and keep in touch, and it's really. It expanded my horizons in terms of what I wanted to do and what I want to do and continue to do.
So do you endorse, sponsor, or partner with any small community educational programs?
Yeah, I do. I do a lot of lectures and guest speaking. I'm invited to schools, different organizations. So I go out and do that and talk about pretty much anything they want me to talk about, but primarily around education. I like to keep everything. I keep in my company. We focus on communication, both the collection of data and information and the promotion of it, like creating web designs and media strategy, that sort of thing, and then education policy and project development. This is what I do. And then governance, indigenous-based governance, and how you apply that into a contemporary organization. How do you utilize the circle, for example, or the talking circle when you're making policy for your organization or the direction it wants to go? So I've worked with all kinds of sizes of companies.
Reason asking, I'm kind of like spearheading a project where we're trying to get a program on the street in all the libraries. Right now we're partnered with Edmonton Public Library.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to get it back into the Remand Center, into the Fort Saskatchewan.
Wonderful.
On multiple units. And like this program, we teach different aspects of self-awareness, emotional intelligence, like kind of building self-efficacy.
Good.
The importance of going within, how we can find all the answers within.
Yes.
The powers of your creative visualization and imagination, and how important that is.
That's excellent.
Last night we had like an unofficial program meeting. Our attendance was small. It was only around like 15, 16 people, but we had a full group of people, and most of them were pretty foreign. They're not foreign, strangers to each other. They were new. We had lots of new people last night. And to sit down in a circle and talk about different life experiences, manifesting things, and creating opportunity and relationships and stuff like that, and have these strangers just like open up and be vulnerable, and it's pretty powerful. And like that's just like a side project of the main program. The main program is like really intensive. Would you be interested in ever like taking a look at that and like giving me some feedback on it, or do I have to like go through your company?
No. I mean, just send me an email with something in it, and I'll give it a read. Sure, I'm happy to help out that way. I don't do everything for profit all the time. I do commit time to nonprofit organizations. So,
like your communication company, like you do the work of a nonprofit organization, but you've been able to manage to swing it and sell it.
Yeah. Yes.
Like with all the societal issues, like I can come up with 100 different program ideas, but finding funding for them is ridiculous. Or how can we take these program ideas that fill the void in the cracks of inner city issues or something, and make $1, like turn a profit so we can keep the business going? Like we have to be able to cater to some form of entity that perpetuates money.
Well, yeah.
Because the government isn't putting it out there for these people to like fix these problems right now.
Sure.
Like I now like to like call myself an advocate. I recently spoke on mental health summit. And actually, before I get into that, I met you or seen you. We didn't have the chance to talk, but at the Lieutenant Governor's Circle Awards on addiction and mental health.
Yes,
and that was a really big night for me. That was actually 2 days after my best childhood friend took his life.
Yes,
and so I was there. I was still in shock.
Yeah,
but he was there with me.
Yes,
and I really felt that like this is my calling. Like I'm meant to be here today. And Mike, a guy I'm working with at Clean Scene there, he gave me a big shout out that day.
Yeah.
And for volunteering, because I worked with him, like volunteered 5 days a week. I'm still volunteering 5 days a week.
Wow. That's dedication.
But well, like the government, to me, they're not doing it for people with mental health.
Yeah.
And I'd like to find a way that we can.
Absolutely. I mean, it's. I think the rules that are governing the allocation of funds is just so restrictive. And you're right. at least you're alluding to the fact that if you're not within that inner circle, you're not going to get the support that you need. And we're seeing more and more funds that are going into these like super big agencies and that sort of thing.
Yeah, the ones that have been around forever that keep perpetuating the problems.
Mm-hmm. Those ones, yeah.
Those ones, yeah. You know who you are.
Yeah. And the politics are just so thick,
Well, like, we got a little bit of time left, and I just want to like get all that nasty shit out of the way. What are some of your favorite books that you've ever read?
Oh my gosh, I've read a lot of books, but narrowing one down.
Give me your top 3 if you can.
Okay, I'm a fan of Sherman Alexie, who's a writer from the States. He's a Native American Yakima, I believe, is what he is. And I studied with him. He and I had the same teacher in writing at the University of Colorado at Boulder. So when he first came out with a book called Tonto and the Lone Ranger Fist Fight in Heaven, it is a great book of short stories. It's really quite funny and very insightful. And so he's right up there as one of my best authors, I guess you can say.
Yeah.
I liked Richard Wagamese as well. Unfortunately, he passed away a year or two ago. And he was another great indigenous writer from Winnipeg, I believe, is where he was from. And so he's up there. Gosh, sometimes I kind of read too much nonfiction stuff too. So
that's my heroine.
Yeah,
It's nonfiction and self-development.
Yeah. Well, that's why I want to finish up my PhD, just so I can get back to that process of writing, because I want to write. I have a few novel ideas that I've kind of framed out and that sort of thing. So that's where I think I'm going to be going next, is going into the realm of writing, because that's what I started out my whole career for, was to become a writer. But then I got sidetracked with this thing called education.
I wrote a book.
Yeah.
It's not published yet, so I guess it's not a book. It's what is it called? A manifest?
A manuscript.
A manuscript. There you go. So I have a manuscript sitting there. I'm waiting for a publisher, and I wrote it while I was in jail.
Yeah.
And I had the support of the guards on boot camp.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And do you know of boot camp?
Yes.
In the Remand Center?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. There's an individual there, Glenn Vey, amazing individual, and he's a guard.
Yeah.
And it totally took away the whole stigma of us versus them.
Yes.
He actually cares for people. It's amazing.
Yeah.
But he helped me with like putting together resources and stuff, and I put it's just about 80, 90 pages long. First 45 pages are like self-development stuff for somebody like sitting in jail, and like how to like practice awareness and meditation, and the importance of physical working out, and also about affirmations and how you can tap into source, and you can create whatever you want by self-talk. And what else did I put in there? And then like the second half of the book was all resources in Edmonton, all the 211 stuff. And also like where to go to get help with housing, even though there's not much. Where to go to get help with
that'd be really helpful.
Yeah, funding, even though it's very little.
Yeah.
But like a step on like where to go to get ID, because lots of times people are released, they don't have ID, so they can't set up a bank account, and so on and so forth. And because I'm not going to get back into that, but I have that. I'm looking for a publisher.
Okay, so that's like a survival handbook almost, right?
That was the title we were going for at first. It was going to be, this is your survival's guide. And we ended up going with Rewired.
Oh, yeah. That's cool.
Me and one other individual wrote it, and he's actually still incarcerated.
Well, I hope that you can get it published soon, because that'll be a very useful tool to have.
Yeah, and like I don't want a single cent from it. I just want it to go back into the remand. I want it on every unit, so people
I see.
have it.
Yeah, and then it'd be very helpful. Absolutely.
Who are some of your favorite mainstream self-help gurus?
Gabor Mate.
Oh yes, in the realm of Hungry Ghosts.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of Landmark Forum?
I've heard of it. Yeah.
I'm going to that this weekend. Actually,
where at?
In Calgary.
In Calgary.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, Gabor Mate's work and stuff is really cool. Another guy, he worked with Gabor Mate. Johann Hari.
I've heard of it, but I haven't.
Chasing the Scream, I think it is.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting book. I also listen to a lot of audiobooks as well. So.
Oh, that's how I get most of my books in nowadays.
Yeah.
What's your latest?
The latest one, I was the Bob Woodward book. I forgot what it was. It's about Trump, right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
About the book?
No, Trump.
Try not to. He's a scary guy. Holy smoke.
Have you heard some of the prophecies that he is the Messiah?
No. Really?
No? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, apparently he's building a temple in Jerusalem.
Oh.
And he's like reenacting these things out of the Bible to.
Oh yeah, I've heard about that. I've heard about those connections, especially from the far right. You know, the Christian right think that he is the one who's going to usher in the end days, so we can all go to heaven, right? It is frightening. But yeah, so it's like he's a reality president, right? And so it's like a reality show, and I'm addicted to it. I can't wait to get home to CNN and see what he said last. You know,
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Oh,
he's gonna be addressing the nation tonight, and that's what is he gonna say? He's gonna declare a national emergency and get the army to build his wall.
Yeah, it is, because you never know. In my eyes, he's a fucking lunatic.
Yeah. Well, he's a sociopath, right? He certainly is a sociopath. He's a prolific liar, and that's a hallmark of a sociopath. Yeah. So it's, I listened to that book because I really wanted to find out more. And there was another one by Wolf that I also listened to as well, Fire and Fury.
Fire and Fury.
Yeah. Yeah. So
isn't that the name of Theo Fleury's book? Or he wrote it with Theo Fleury, right?
No.
No? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get that guy coming up. That'd be a good episode.
Yeah, no, it would be, actually.
Yeah, he's hilarious. He's like, you guys, you think you got it rough? He came and spoke to us in jail.
Yeah.
That Mr. Vey, he bring him on. But he goes, you guys might be stressed out and upset and missing your families or worried about what you lost. He goes, don't worry about what you lost. He's like, I blew $10 million on cocaine and hookers. Yeah, just openly throw that out there. I was like, oh shit, I guess my problems aren't that bad.
Yeah. So those are two that come off just off the top of my head, and I enjoyed their book, Johann Hari and Gabor Mate's work.
Right now, I'm listening to The Code of the Extraordinary Mind.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember who that's by either, though. But
yeah,
it's pretty good. Yeah. What are some of the ways every day, like habits or rituals that you practice success?
Every day, I smudge. I smudge myself every day, and that really starts. And sometimes I'll do it a couple times a day, depending on what I'm doing. Right? That to me is always something that's important. I never thought of it this way before, but I walk my dogs at least twice a day. That gives me some downtime. I'll put on a book or an audiobook or something, and I'll just go walk down by the Terwilliger Dog Park. It's a huge place, and it's Disneyland for my dogs, and so that gets me into that meditative state. So when I'm feeling down, and I take my dogs for a walk, my spirit lifts up because I go walking through the trees, and everything's just it just kind of brings your heart back down.
Yeah, go connect, get away from social media and all the distractions, and appreciate your pets. Well,
and you have to be really focused as well in terms of your mindfulness. And so I think having a conversation with yourself is a good thing.
Okay, and one more thing. I seen a quote from that I don't know if you put it on there, but I think it was from your grandfather. Struggle will always be there, but you have to remember the people and give back.
Yeah.
And that's when you find success.
Yes, exactly. And that was from my, that was something that was really put deeply in my heart by my grandmother. Yeah. Is that you always, when we do well in the world, we should always look back and help those who need help. That's what we have to do. So that's always been a part of my family's commitment to community.
There's your gift to the world right now. In giving, there is receiving.
Yes. Absolutely.
Okay, well, we're going to wrap it up here. We're out of time. Thank you very much, Lewis, for coming on. It's been an honor again. I really appreciate you.
Well, thank you.
So, everybody, Please subscribe, share it to all your friends. You can find the After the Show blog where you're going to get all my afterthoughts and feelings on the show that we just had at www.lifeonlifestermspodcast.com. Become a Pride member at your soonest convenience and drop us your email. We will not solicit it to anybody. We will only send you information and content about upcoming shows, experiences, and opportunities. If you'd like to become a financial contributor, we do have a Patreon page, www.patreon.com/lifeonlifesterms with both capital L's. Life on Life's Terms, capital L's. Contribution as low as $5 a month is greatly appreciated, and more than enough, we will send you all the good vibes that we can. Thank you very much, listeners, and I love you.